Hello everyone, my name is David I'm back from APO. Today I invited Dr. Young Ko from Seoul National University, Korea. Consumers use platforms to purchase products and services from other platform users. Platform-based business have proven to be very highly valuable to consumers and investors alike. So while traditional businesses create value by creating products or services, platforms create value by enabling these transactions. So today, through the presentation of the Dr. Ko, we can learn a lot more about the platform business. So Dr. Ko, without further ado, could you share your insight on the platform business?
Thank you, Mr. Beck. I'm very honored to be invited to PIT Talk of Asia Productive Organization. So today I would like to talk about the platform so-called SuperApps in Southeast Asia and leapfrogging from less developed systems toward the mobile first area. And so what strategies have been effective to change the landscape as well as to success. Today, I would like to talk about the reimagine ASEAN. The super apps are changing the landscape. Why I focus on those kind of super apps and especially in ASEAN countries, because it's a platform business and whatever big tech firms changing all those business area and economy, and especially in ASEAN too. Most of the people have been maybe have visited Bangkok or Bali for holidays. So the town of Southeast Asia reminds you of exotic mood and beautiful place with a nice beach. But in the history, we call this area the land below the wind. Maybe you can see the geographical position on the map is positioned between the India and Pacific in the middle of the route of Europe to North Asia. But why we are nowadays, why we are focusing on ASEAN or Southeast Asia? Let's see the definition of the ASEAN-centric. The global consulting firm McKinsey defined the 21st is ASEAN-centric. By 2040, in ASEAN, more than 3 billion people will live in urban areas. About 40% global consumption will be from ASEAN. The ASEAN will contribute to 52% of the world GDP based on PPP. And ASEAN-centric means ASEAN is the most important in global economy, including Southeast Asia. So why ASEAN? ASEAN is the third largest population area. The 10 countries in this region established the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, ASEAN, in 1967, but launched ASEAN Economic Community in 2015. The ASEAN Economic Community, like the European Union, is one economic bloc. The 10 countries established one single market. Of course, it's not completely unified market, less integrated compared with the EU. Despite of repetitively loose binding, the ASEAN is one economic bloc with a gradually increasing importance. See the population first. The ASEAN Economic Community has the world's third largest population based on 6.7 billion, following only China and India. And ASEAN has the world's fifth largest economy based on the total GDP. It's a huge market in terms of consumer size and economy size, which is the basis for good market opportunity. So look at the foreign direct investment. The major source of economic growth is the foreign direct investment, especially for emerging markets. ASEAN is the fourth FDI destination. So ASEAN has a large population and high and stable economic growth and improvement of income level, and regional free trade imply that there are great opportunities for business. So many of the people regard ASEAN still behind of economic growth or digitalization or technical innovation. But up to now, the Southeast Asia economy developed, but still many people, those kind of countries are far from digitalization and innovation. But absolutely not. Now it's time for us to reimagine Southeast Asia. The new wave in South Asia is improving faster and is more comprehensive than we expected. So they are leapfrogging to mobile first and digital first. That's why I make the title of Reimagining the Southeast Asia or ASEAN, the leapfrogging to digital area. Let's look at the Southeast Asian market opportunity and digital economy. The majority of the market Southeast Asia is called ASEAN 6, denoting the Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand, Indonesia, Philippines, and Vietnam. According to Google, Temasek, and Bain & Companies, the Southeast Asia internet economy estimates 100 billion in 2019, but 105 billion in 2020 will be $309 billion in 2025. So it will grow most 3 times in 5 years. So internet users also growing from 260 million in 2015 to 400 million in 2020. During the pandemic in 2020, 40 million new users came up. So absolute value of the size of the digital economy seems relatively small compared to other developed markets. However, we should consider the market opportunity compared to the population lower penetration. The rate is still low. The speed of growth is rapid and magnitude of growth is much larger, absolutely high, growing up exponentially. That's why we focusing on the Southeast Asian market opportunity. Even though the famous Hong Kong businessman Lee Ka-sing also interested in growth market opportunity in Southeast Asia. So he invested huge money in tech startups in Southeast Asia. But we may raise the question such as who is the leading innovation driver or which company is the game changer in this area. Let's look at how many unicorns in ASEAN. 2016, only 7 unicorns in Southeast Asia, but 2021, there are 35 unicorns. The most outstanding companies are Gojek, Grab, SEA, and Line, and Jalo. These companies established the platform business which anyone in Southeast Asia cannot help using in their daily life. The platform business model that creates value by facilitating exchange between 2 or 3 independent groups or usually consumers and producers. But like a Facebook, Uber, Alibaba, these businesses don't directly create and control inventory via the supply chain the way linear business do. But however, now we are focused on those kind of platform business companies. But nowadays, we call them the SuperApps. What's the difference between SuperApps and platform? The SuperApp is many services can be accessed through the one application. For example, WeChat is the messaging app, but you can pay the bills and transfer money and read the newspaper through WeChat platform. The Alipay also provide many different types of services using their application. In Korea, Naver and Kakao are regarded as a platform like a super app. In Japan, Line will be transformed to super app nowadays. Let's see the application of the Grab. The Grab started the ride-hailing service in 2012. But now in Grab application, you can order food and call courier service and book a car and use a financial service by GrabPay. So under one umbrella, you may enjoy lots of convenient services. That's why we call them the super app, not only platform. The Grab, Gojek, Sea are representative super apps in Southeast Asia. They cover many different types of services. The Gojek is an Indonesia-based decacorn started from motorbike ride-hailing and expanded their services from massage booking and to financial services. SEA, we call it C. The C is the largest Southeast Asian companies in terms of market capitalization. C originated from game publisher Garena and challenged e-commerce and fintech. These companies build up their own ecosystem where a person may stick to their daily life. So There are two other significant challengers as a super app, Line and Jalo. The Line is a Korean-Japanese company, the most powerful messaging app in Thailand. And Jalo is like a Vietnamese WhatsApp. So they have built up their own ecosystem covering the many different types of services. So they transforming their platform business to super app too. So let's see the presence of Southeast Asian super apps by country. Grab and Line entered 8 countries, even though the number of services and market share level are not same, but every day market expansion news came out from many countries and many companies. So this status will be changing soon. So those you can also see the AirAsia. AirAsia also tried to change their business to super app. But how these startups grow so fast, changing their platform business into super app? Of course, market opportunity is huge, but without investment, no outcome. Global tech investor, venture capitalists have been investing these unicorns and startups in Southeast Asia. The SoftBank is the most famous tech firm investor. The SoftBank invested in Grab, the faster than in Uber. The Tencent invested in SEA and VNG, the parent company of Jalo. The Google and Facebook PayPal invested in Gojek. The Line merged with Yahoo. The largest shareholder of Yahoo is SoftBank. So all those big tech companies are interested in the tech business or platform business in Southeast Asia and focusing on the super apps. So let's see one of the representative super app in Southeast Asia, the Grab. Grab is the #1 super app in ASEAN. Grab dominated the 70% of market share in ride hailing and the #1 service provider in digital wallet payments and #1 company in online food delivery. So you can see the map and the year when they entered those country market. So since 2013, they have been providing service in Thailand. But when they established in 2012, so just started their service, they move on to the overseas market. Okay, in this slide, the left side, you can see the very early stage their application of Grab. The former name of Grab was the My Taxi. At this time, the My Taxi, just a taxi booking app only in Malaysia, but they looked at the bigger markets in Southeast Asia. Grab moved to a neighbor country just after launch of their first service in 2012. That's their strategy. And then Grab add up other service like a Grab Car, Grab Express, and Grab Pay, and Grab Food, and Grab Finance. So now Grab build a real connected world from transportation to financial service. They already got they received digital banking service license from Singapore government. So another super app in Southeast Asia is Gojek. Recently, Gojek merged with Tokopedia, so they changed their name is GoGo Group. So GoGo Group, it's like a sum up entity, including Amazon, DoorDash, Uber, PayPal, Stripe. So Gojek started from motorbike booking service and add up the payment, shopping, and others. So home market Indonesia, because Gojek started from Indonesia. So home market Indonesia is the largest market in Southeast Asia, enough for Gojek to focusing on rather than overseas expansion. That's the difference between Gojek and Grab. GoPay is really changing the whole Indonesian economy. So how to transfer, how to pay, only cash. But using GoPay, they're paying the bill or transfer money is much easier with a low cost. After merging with Tokopedia, the Gojek and GoTo Group has three different types of business portfolio. So mobility and transportation, and the GoTo Financial, e-commerce. So now let's see the largest super app in Southeast Asia, SEA. Some people call it just the C. The CEA is the brief abbreviation of Southeast Asia, the founder said. So C or SEA, it's like a format of the Tencent plus Amazon. Their market capitalization is more than $120 billion, the largest company in Southeast Asia in terms of market cap. Their revenue is $1.6 billion, more than that. So this is the really largest super app in Southeast Asia. They have three different types of business portfolio. The first area is digital entertainment. Actually, Garena, it's like a game publisher and then game maker. So most of their earnings still are from Garena. And then how they grow themselves, through the e-commerce. The SEA, they enter the e-commerce industry in the name of Shopee. The Shopee is the second, not the second, is the follower of the e-commerce in Southeast Asia. But nowadays, Shopee is the top e-commerce provider. And then another sector is digital financial services. Every super app has a fintech arms or financial services. So C-Money is their fintech service arm. So I talk about the market capitalization. So their value is growing and growing up. So their stock price surged through pandemic 2020. So their stock price is really strongly high, defeating other global big tech companies such as Tesla, Amazon, Apple. So their stock price return is most impressive in global market. So many other global investors, they are looking for the second C, or some other company just like a C. How they become super apps? What is their strategy for growth or scale up? The first answer is to define problem and to provide right solution. The founder of Grab said he was there at the right time and with the right people. Professor Tara Teixeira said, right question always bring right answer. So Grab and Gojek try to figure out what the pain point of the people in Southeast Asia. And then they provide or develop the proper solution. For example, the Grab and Gojek started from ride-hailing service. Why? Because mobility and transportation is the most significant social problem in Southeast Asia. Look at this photo. It's always happen in Jakarta, in Kuala Lumpur, in Bangkok, in Manila. So this is the common social problem across Southeast Asia. That's why they focus on those kind of problems. So what's the solution? Is a ride-hailing service. But not only the solution, that's not the right answer, because how they grow up, how they make the scale up across Southeast Asia. That's a regionalization, because the Grab started their business in Malaysia, but Malaysia market is not so big, not like in Indonesia, because their population is much smaller than Indonesia. So regionalization is one of the key of their growth. Let's see the transportation market growth. In 2015, only the total market size is only 2 billion, but 2019 is 8 billion. The 2020 is because of the pandemic, the market size is shrink. But 2025, it will be the $19 billion. So that's why Grab focusing on the expansion strategy into overseas. But look at the Gojek. Gojek only entered Singapore and Philippines and Vietnam because Indonesia is their home market. So Gojek relatively focus on their home market because Indonesia is huge enough to focus on. What about the food delivery? Food delivery market is growing up so fast. So Grab entered all those countries in their food delivery market. It's like Thailand and Vietnam and Philippines and other countries. But Gojek only focus on the Thailand and Indonesia market in terms of food delivery services. But Grab take the number 1 position in all those countries, but Gojek only take a 4th rank in Thailand, and also they sold this service to AirAsia. So we can see that those kind of different growth strategy between Grab and Gojek. And another answer to their growth strategy or scale-up strategy is hyperlocalization, because there are many competitors of Grab and Gojek and Sea. But how they compete, how they defeat their competitor, the key is the hyperlocalization or culturalization, or we call the super local. Let's see the Grab's case. The Grab always, before, Grab competed with Uber. Uber is a global company. But how they compete, how they defeat Uber? Because Grab's hyper-localization strategy was successful. For example, when you use the Grab in other countries like Thailand or Vietnam, you don't need to translate your language, because even though you never know how to speak Vietnamese, it's much easier. You just type and then automatically translate it in your messaging. And then Grab, also you can pay the cash or credit card, but before Grab only accepted the credit card. And then easy to tracking service, the in-app call and messaging service. So all those kind of localized service was successful, much better than Uber's reaction. And then LineCreator Markets. Line also is a very popular messaging app in Thailand. So they developed what service can be effective to Thailand people. Thailand people would like to make some other extra income through the small business. So LineCreator Markets was so successful for young generation in Thailand people. And then the other photo shows is a tuk-tuk. You know, it's a small motorbike. It's not a motorbike. It's a tuk-tuk. It's a very popular transportation tool in Myanmar or Cambodia or some area in Thailand. So this kind of service can be used using a Grab app. So it's a much more localized service Grab invented. But Uber couldn't do that. So we always talk about the innovation or disruptive innovation by startups. But disruption starts with the unhappy customers, not technology itself. So it is the changing of customer preference and behaviors that is contributing to the digital disruption in the market. So how are you planning to disrupt the markets? They would look at the consumer behavior change, and they would be very quick to respond to those changes, not really mentioning much of technology. So those super apps in Southeast Asia, they also try to think about what the consumer need and what the pain point of consumer. So they just follow up the demands of customers. The technology is a kind of a backup. When we talk about the Southeast Asia or changing of this digital economy in this area, I always mention that there is a leapfrogging from undeveloped system toward mobile first system. So who grabbed this chance? Those kind of game changers like SuperApps, those kind of companies, we have to look at what they are aimed to build up. So those kind of tech companies nowadays are looking at the new generation. We call it Gen Z. So those digital native people, those people's proportion is much larger than old generation compared to any other countries. Like Japan and Korea, the older people proportion is much larger than in Southeast Asia. So what I'm talking about using this kind of statistics, in Southeast Asia, still there are lots of market opportunity. So those super apps has a lot of potential to change more and more in the future too. Thank you for listening to my long presentation. Thank you for your patience. And then, do you have any question about my presentation?
Okay, Dr. Ko, thank you so much for sharing your insights on the topic of platform business during your presentation. So to help viewers understand this subject better, I would like to ask you a basic but important question about the difference between a platform business and a linear business. For instance, is Netflix a platform business or a linear business?
Even though it's a few years ago, we can differentiate platform and super app or linear business or another business or industry A or industry B like that. But nowadays, there is no absolutely obvious line between two sectors or three sectors. So, for example, Netflix, they are platform, but in the other side, they created their own content more and more. Nowadays, it's a very famous, the Squid Game, because they invested, right? So, we don't need to differentiate like this kind of area of the business itself. But anyway, I think Netflix is expanding their business area, not only from the platform into IP create, IP business. So we can say is adding up or expansion, or in that side, we can call it the transforming.
Okay, in many cases, regulations can be a stumbling block for innovative startups. So can you tell us how startups like Grab or Gojek, just like you present today, that were able to surmount regulatory hurdles? As you know, in some countries, this kind of business cannot get started due to existing regulations or labor union rules.
For example, Grab started their business in Malaysia 2012. So there is some conflict between the company and taxi drivers. What reaction the Malaysian government did? They let them in the gray area. But they developed some kind of mediation policy. So nowadays, is all the Grab drivers, they need to get some test or training program, and then they have to get some kind of a license. So those kind of Southeast Asian governments, they would like to develop their own resolution. And then we have to understand the unique situation in Southeast Asia. It's an emerging market. So there is no dominant established platform before the Gojek and Grab turned up. But nowadays, they don't need to worry about the one dominant players because Gojek and Grab always compete in every market. In the other side, the Grab and Gojek and all other tech unicorns, they contribute each country's economy through the social responsibility or social impact activities. Some other case, after Uber left Southeast Asia, Grab remained one dominant player in every 8 countries. So many governments in Southeast Asia accused Grab of dominating the market. But what Grab react? They pay all the charges, and then they follow the government guideline. So they find a way. So we have to understand each different market condition and what's the perspective of government. So I think there is no more those kind of conflict.
So I fully agree with your explanation about pain point being the starting point for innovation. So people always say that listen to your customers or customers know best. But how can you ensure that we come up with the right solutions to pain points?
Trial and error. So many of the startup founders said just start it. We never know which answer is the most proper or the best answer of those problems. So many of the companies, they have to start their service, and then they got a reaction from the customers and users, and then they develop and they elaborated their services, which is the best way. Let me bring the one example, like a Grab case. Grab started their taxi booking service in 2012 in Malaysia. But at that time, there is some kind of conflict between Grab and taxi drivers. What's the right answer? Nobody knows. Still in Korea, there is a big debate among taxi drivers and the startup and government, and all different types of answers came out. But we never know what's the best solution. But in that case, in Malaysia, they also make a decision. What's the best? So the Malaysia government leave that area in gray area. But after that, they developed some kind of a special program for Grab drivers. Like a taxi drivers, they need to get a training, and then they need to get a special license to be a Grab driver. I think that's the very wise solution for those kind of conflict. And then what about in fintech area? Some countries allowed, some countries never allowed in P2P lending or something like that. So Indonesian government lived in sandbox. And the Singapore government also many kinds of different digital services in sandbox. So they needed to take a time for startups to develop the better technology and better innovative service. But there is no hurdle legally. So there is a government to give us some room, and then maybe establish a better regulatory guideline in the later. So I think that this is a much wise steps. You know, everybody knows that there is a big problem in the transportation or public transportation in Southeast Asia and heavy traffic jam. So many startup founders recognize those kind of a pain point and the problem, but who invent more proper solution? So for example, Grab founders and Gojek founders, they find out the right solution. But at the first stage of they started their startup, they even know what's the best answer. But anyway, they bring some solution, and then they make the shop their service. For example, Grab started only taxi booking app, but when they're providing their first taxi booking service, then they think about, they need a more wide service, including the normal car ride-hailing service or motorbike service like that. And the Gojek started their service as a motorbike booking service, and then they expanded their service into the car ride-hailing and then payment. So when they're doing their service, they catch some other pain points related to their first service. So the first thing is customers has always those kind of pain points, and they knew what they want. But who give the right answer? Is all the startups, they think of over and over and then sharpening their service and then develop the better service and better solution. That's what I'm thinking.
Right now, platform businesses are booming. Will this business model be sustainable? When I see how Nike has been so successful in its direct-to-consumer or D2C platform, I wonder whether other companies will follow suit, considering that Nike's D2C sales now comprise a third of its total revenues. Although their revenues are impressive, when it comes to net profits, it's still too soon to tell whether current platform business models will be sustainably profitable in the future. How do you see their business models evolving to ensure profitability?
When we talk about the sustainability of the business, we have to focus on profitability first, right? So if the business is profitable, then they can make it sustain, and then they have some room to, they have some energy to invent or invest in other areas. But let's see the SEA. C is really growing up and booming up. They entered in even Latin America and Europe market too. But their profitability, let's see, they still has a lot of loss. But many people think they have still lots of market growth opportunities. So depending on which industry, depending on which area they are. So, for example, Nike is they are against to the shoes e-commerce. Actually, they take it their own way. But Starbucks, they belong to any platform, but they make it themselves a platform. So there are many ways. So I cannot say is the platform can be sustainable or not. But there is some specific surrounding, like China. The government engaged in their platform business. But look at the Southeast Asia. It's a totally different situation. But so especially in Southeast Asia, I think the platform business still have a lot of growth opportunity.
I have already asked you about regulators. Although platform business models have been doing great, it is also true that platform-based businesses can face regulatory headwinds in many places, even after achieving success in specific markets. For example, recent legislation in some countries restrict the companies from selling their own products through platforms that they own. It means that some platform company cannot sell their own speakers or their own electronic devices on their own website. Likewise, cities around the world have created new requirements to slow the spread of services such as Airbnb. What do you think platform businesses need to consider to overcome these kind of restrictions?
Those kind of legal restriction or pressure from civil society spread out across the many industry, especially in environment or social value and others. And yeah, maybe ESG we call it. Yeah. So those kind of pressure will come up on startups too, but not small startups. Probably focus on very big tech firms, like a global firms in US or very big tech firms in China. But what about in Southeast Asia? Probably some different aspect, different approach to platform business. For example, Grab, Gojek, they are contribute a lot of employment and developing their digital technology level. Increase their level up to global. So nowadays, you ask some of the people, what's the representative companies in Southeast Asia? Many people think about Grab and Gojek and see. But before, most of the people think about maybe natural resources company and food companies like that. So, and then those kind of companies provide a lot of business opportunities to their partners, such as drivers, delivery men, maybe small, medium-sized merchants, and many small restaurants. So, I think it's some different aspect to the SuperApps in Southeast Asia. It's kind of a partnership, and then there is some other opportunity for their grow together, make a harmony together like that. So that's why the Grab Gojek C, they publish the social impact report. Even though Grab and Gojek, they are not listed companies, so there is no obligation, but they would like to publish a social impact report to make an impact or give a good image or good corporations in Southeast Asia. So I think even though later on some other restriction imposed on those companies and government will find a way, and not in the harsh ways to be shut down or something like that. So do I have some too positive aspect on that? Founder of Grab, they always emphasize the social value. Or even though the founder of Gojek, Nadia Makarim, now he is the minister of the Indonesian government, right? So which imply they would like to make a better society with the government and with the local community together. So I think in Southeast Asia, we'll find a better way rather than other countries. Yeah.
Okay, so the next question can be a little bit complicated because I understand that this is not an easy question to answer, but I have to ask you this question because in some countries, data privacy legislation like the General Data Protection Regulation, or they call it like a GDPR, agreed upon by the European Parliament and Council in April 2016, replaced the Data Protection Directive 9546 EC in spring 2018 as the primary law regulating how companies protect the EU citizens' personal data. Of course, we are not talking about the EU now, but based upon this case, we can think about, because this kind of a regulation is there because sometimes this kind of a data collection or data privacy collection can challenge the lack of transparency and effective governance over how platforms collect and use data, as well as what kind of data they are allowed to collect. So how will platform businesses handle these privacy issues?
Yeah, I think it's a very critical issue in Southeast Asia, not only in other countries. So actually, those kind of a regulation or guideline in each countries in Southeast Asia is not serious, not yet. But as you know, the Grab, Gojek, those SuperApps provided their service across more than 2 or 3, 4 countries. So who can give a right guideline for those kind of big tech companies regarding private personal data protection? So I think ASEAN take a step to establish some better guideline or regulatory framework regarding this kind of a problem. But ASEAN also has that kind of roadmap, but not yet accomplished enough. So I think that this is will be the very critical issue in the future. But I think the international organization give a right guideline or best example to the ASEAN entity. That these super app provide their services more than one country. So one government cannot control this kind of issue for that for these companies. So ASEAN, they have to build up the framework and regulatory guideline for their members country regarding those kind of a super app, which hold many different nationalities members' personal data. So which is, I think the ASEAN guideline or regulatory framework can be the best solution or best policy to protect the personal data in those in this area.
It is because even though one country can maybe regulate the how they collect their data, personal data, still there are another country, maybe they are not be able to do it. So in order to prevent that from happening like a blind site, so we need to have a kind of a uniform or standardized regulation across the countries, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because, for example, Laos and Vietnam has a different types of regulatory guideline or protect the personal data, but what about the Singapore at a different level? So, for example, it's a financial data or P2P industry. Indonesia has a more strict regulation. So all different types of industry and different countries, they have their own guideline. So how to make a consistent regulatory scheme for super apps? So that's why the ASEAN or international level provide some best guideline, then each country's government can follow that.
Okay, Dr. Ko, thank you. Finally, some unicorns like a Grab are expecting to be listed or IPO soon. So may I ask you to share your insight on this issue in terms of their further business growth? This is just one example. Of course, it's not confined to the Grab, but I think it's going to be a very good practice or good example because the startups not easily going to be able to be listed or IPO. So this can be a very good case. What do you think about this?
Grab decided to go to the stock market in 2019. Maybe they planned it much earlier, but 2020, during the pandemic, the global stock market was booming so much. So they thought this is the right chance to be listed in US stock market. The SEAC shows the best example, right? So, but what about the valuation? I already mentioned there are still many growth opportunities in Southeast Asia. So number one, super at Grab valuation is not overestimate, I think. But depending on market condition, nowadays a big tech is a little bit shrink, and the investors worry about the tendering or increase of interest rate. So depending on market condition, but in the long term, the Grab or Gojek, those kind of super apps valuation will be prosperous. So, the Grab's investor, such as BlackRock, their shares can be locked in for 3 years. They cannot sell. So, which means they are bet on growth of Grab in the future. And there's some other many tech companies in Southeast Asia, they announced going public in this year and next year. And then many logistics companies, not only super app, they are going public. So, which means many of the tech companies still bet on the market will grow in near future. So not only super app, we have to look at some other all tech companies in Southeast Asia. I think it's a good opportunity for us.
Thank you so much for sharing your insight, Dr. Ko. I think this topic is very interesting because the platform businesses actually have been addressing the people's pain points and very successfully. I think they have been doing a great job to increase the value of people's quality of life. At the end of the day, we want to be happy. This kind of platform business in Southeast Asia, Grab or Gojek is a good example of how they can increase the value of the people's life and social values. So for that, I really appreciated your time. Viewers, thank you so much for watching our interview today. And I really hope that you can stay well and healthy until we see you next time. Thank you.